For this episode of Coffee with Closers, I'm sitting down with Tony Ehrbar, the Chief Joy Officer of American Tent. Tony left the corporate world of consulting at Bain & Co. to become a tentrepreneur, as he calls it. Stay tuned to hear how Tony is building a high-performance team at American Tent.
Thanks for joining us for this episode of Coffee with Closers, where business leaders share insights on how to build businesses from the ground up and best practices for innovating in their industry.
Hey Tony, I'm super excited to have you join me for this episode of Coffee with Closers.
Yep, super excited to be here.
Yes, every entrepreneur has a story of overcoming obstacles and becoming an entrepreneur and starting a business. Can you share our audience a little bit about how you became an entrepreneur?
Yeah, I didn't originally think I was going to be an entrepreneur. I was a chemist, an undergrad. Thought, I'm going to go off and work at a pharmaceutical company, and spent my first week at my PhD program and realized I liked people a lot more than I liked research labs. And so I came back and kind of parlayed that into a consulting gig. Worked in consulting for 4 years and went off to business school and thought I really like solving other people's problems. It's fast paced. And so went to work at Bain Consulting, where I got burned out after about 3 years. It's the consulting life is you learn a ton. I kind of call it my postdoc to my MBA, but I needed a change of pace. And so I went to work at United Airlines, which was kind of the opposite of what I had at Bain, where I was finding myself finishing my work by noon and bored, and thought, it'd be fun to have a hobby and maybe I'll buy a small business. And so went on Craigslist and saw a tent rental business for sale in my hometown of Green Bay. Called my brother-in-law and said, "What do you think about owning a tent rental business?" And he said, "Yeah, let's do it." And so since then we've sold the tent rental business, but we bought tent manufacturing. And so that's where I focus all my time right now.
And you coined a term called tentrepreneural, right?
Tentrepreneur works really nice because you just throw a T in front of entrepreneur and it works. Yeah.
Awesome. So you went from a business consultant to now a tent manufacturer.
Yes.
A big
correct.
Transition. Of all the things you've accomplished so far, right, especially from building a company, what's the one big accomplishment that you're super proud of?
I think it's building the team that we have here. So we started from scratch. When we bought the business, it was a complete turnaround. We didn't bring any employees with, and we've grown to 50 employees. And we're adding a second shift starting next week. We're moving into a new building. So it's just, I'm really proud of being able to employ people here in Green Bay. We pay a really good wage. We take really good care of our people. There was a story, Bob Chapman, who owns Barry Waymiller, wrote a book called Everybody Matters. Mm-hmm. And in that book, he talked about going to church one day, and his wife had asked after he got out of church what his big takeaway was. And he had heard the pastor talk about how hard it was to write a sermon, and how impactful he knew that was for everyone coming to church. And so he was thinking, I have employees for 40 hours a week. So if anyone's responsible for how happy or unhappy they are, it's me. Mm-hmm. And I really liked that message. And so for me, it's just about pouring into my employees and bringing good people onto the team and enriching their lives.
Yeah, obviously you spend a good half of your life in the corporate world doing consulting and all those sort of stuff. And then now you're actually a business owner running a company. What's the one big lesson you learned in the process of building your company?
Yeah, just because you fail doesn't make you a failure. I used to hold on to every failure personally. And so it was if something didn't go right, it was an indictment of me as a person. When I let go of those things and realized that I'm not a failure, we failed, but we can learn from it. I've gone from I've worked on being more resilient. I want to get to the point where I'm anti-fragile. There's a great book about that. But the idea of you see an obstacle, and rather than it even being an obstacle, it's a learning opportunity and a springboard to get better. Mm-hmm. So detaching those two things was a huge aspect for me, and just from a mental health perspective, right?
Most certainly. And I think as entrepreneurs, right, we have to have some reason why we're doing what we're doing, right? It's not often money, right, the primary driver. So what is your primary why that keeps you motivated?
Yep. My daughter and my wife certainly keep me motivated. I'm an achiever. I want to be able to leave something better than how I found it. And then it's the people within these four walls. When you bring a new employee in who's worked at a company, thought they liked their job, come over to work for us, and they're like, this is so, you treat us like adults. Like I have employees who come in and they're like, hey, I'm going to take a vacation in a week. And I was like, sounds good. You're an adult. I said, I know you'll, or I'm going to work from home because my kid's sick. So just being able to be flexible and let people be their true selves and be their authentic selves at work means a lot to me.
Most certainly. And I know when you said, your family is the most important part, right? That's your why. How do you make sure that you're able to prioritize that, right? Oftentimes in the interest of doing something for the family, you oftentimes spend more of your time in the business. So how do you make sure you have a good balance there?
Yeah. I'm actively working on that all the time. I was just talking with my therapist this morning about my phone and about trying to be a little bit, so Cal Newport wrote a good book, Digital Minimalism, and trying to keep your device away and be present in the moment that you have, so you're not attached into work. I always found I would always have my toe in everything at work and worrying about everything. And my team a couple weeks ago told me, they're like, do you trust us? And I said, I absolutely trust you. And I built a really awesome executive team. And they said, we got this. Mm-hmm. You do the things that bring you energy, the things that give you joy, coming on and doing a podcast with you, or going out and landing big accounts, that kind of stuff. And so it's being focused on my 1 and 2 priorities at work, not being so focused on everything that I'm just all consumed. And then it's the being present in the moment when I am home.
Which brings me to my question about mindset, because as entrepreneurs, we have to have always that winning mindset, right? The go-getter mindset. What kind of mindset do you train yourself to have to make sure that you are succeeding and growing?
Yep. Courage over comfort. It's a Brene Brown statement. I have one tattoo. I'm getting a second. It's going to be a buffalo. So I have my little buffalo sitting here on my desk. So do you know what's unique about a buffalo when a storm's approaching that no other animal really does?
No, I don't know.
So a storm is approaching. The buffalo will charge into the storm while the cattle and other animals will run away. So the buffalo gets through the storm quicker. And so for me, it's facing things head on. And it's remembering that courage over comfort phrase to do that bold thing, to do that bold step, rather than sitting back in my comfort zone. And I'm struggling with that right now when it comes to working out and eating healthy. So another good reminder that to focus.
Most certainly. And I think just from having the conversation here, and I also have heard your interviews in the past with on other podcasts, I know you're a big avid reader. What are some of the things you do personally in terms of building, investing into yourself and do personal development?
Mm-hmm. I really like some of the book summary services. So like Get Abstract, Read It For Me. Those are great to give you a little bit of kind of a taste, almost the cliff notes of the book. I do listen to a lot of books on Audible. Listening to podcasts, How I Built This. So all of those things. And then I have some other entrepreneur friends who we have a standing time on the calendar where we get together and just share, talk about our experiences. Like right now we're in the process of hiring a finance professional, so a controller, CFO. And so bouncing ideas off those individuals and learning from them helps a lot. But yeah, like reading books, not normally a page turner type guy. I like the audiobooks because I can do them while doing other things.
I'm same here. And I think my biggest problem is though, like you can't retain all of the information. So oftentimes I would just, bookmark certain sections and go re-listen, because I do listen to it fairly fast as well, like 1.5, 2 times the speed. So you don't get all the information, but I'm like, I just want that nugget and let me just go back and listen to it.
Brene Brown's one of those I can't listen to at 2x. She talks too fast. And I have a cousin who does a podcast. It's a college football podcast. And I told him he's the only person I've ever listened to on a podcast that I can't listen to at any speed faster than normal, because he talks similar to me. He talks very fast.
Makes sense. So, especially as entrepreneurs, right, we kind of have to sometimes operate as a manager. Sometimes we also need to we need to be the leaders, but oftentimes we also are forced to kind of operate in a manager role depending on the different things that you're trying to solve for. What mode do you usually find yourself operating under? More as a leader?
More as a leader. I have behind me, you can see stop asking for permission. Mm-hmm. I don't know if it's written backwards or forwards on the screen, but no, it's leading the team by example, letting the team figure things out on their own, not micromanaging them. They're going to do things much better than I am. I'm kind of a classic visionary. So I love being off thinking about ideas and what we can do next and where we're going to grow and what we're going to be in 5 years. But as soon as you get me down into the weeds, my energy starts to kind of dwindle. So it's trusting that the team is going to get those things done. And until they don't accomplish it, I'm gonna trust them. So our team is focused a lot on that trust side of things. That's, I think, the hardest thing when you're building a team to get. But once you get to the spot that everyone trusts each other, the information flows much better. People can give feedback without people taking it personally. You don't have things that are sitting under the table and drama that can be that can derail things.
So in terms of like on the leadership side, I know you mentioned you don't like getting into the weeds or like the too technical stuff, right? Whereas more of a visionary, big picture guy. So where do you find the balance? Like, okay, this is getting into the weeds of me having to get into the details. How do you kind of sense that from a practical standpoint?
I can feel myself starting to drift, and my team can feel me starting to drift. And a lot of times meetings are more efficient if I'm not there, because I'll be throwing, in our current building, we have, my office is really the only enclosed room. We're moving hopefully to a new building. Everyone will get an office, but out on the main office, which I'm pointing is over here, it's a bunch of tents. And so there's really no place for anyone to meet privately. So a lot of meetings happen just right over there at the conference table. And I'll be sitting over here and I'll be listening to them talk, and I'm like throwing in bombs from the side. So it's just the act of kind of, if I feel like, and I tell my team members this too, if you feel like you're not contributing to a meeting or you don't need to be there, don't get up, leave the meeting, go get your work done. It doesn't make sense. Like I hated back in corporate America that I would spend 8 to 5 in meetings. My wife's a consultant still, 8 to 5 in meetings all day long. And it's like, when do you get your work done? Paul Graham, who's from one of the founders of Y Combinator, wrote a really great article about maker versus manager. And I like that concept. And so I try to time block or almost like day block my schedule. So like Mondays and Wednesdays, my team knows I'm in here. I'll be in meetings, anything they need to schedule me for. Tuesdays, it's kind of a half day. I'm in the office. And then Thursdays and Fridays are Tony Day. And then I call it Friday Fun Day. It's never really fun. It's normally work. But it's taking myself out. Because if you think of like a software developer, right? They want to put their headphones on and they want to code. And anytime you interrupt them, it interrupts their flow. But on the other hand, you have that you do need to be a manager where people are going to be interrupting you. I used to go to Starbucks every morning from 5 until 8. Starbucks is currently closed in the cafes. So I'm having a hard time finding my good sweet spot for where I go and do my thinking and my work. But
yeah, I've heard something very similar. Someone, I don't know if it was an article that I read, it talked about the me time versus meet time versus make time. So clearly defining when you actually would have meetings, so there's no distractions when you have the make time. For some people, it's earlier in the day that they have no distractions and they want to get their make stuff, which is whatever their productive activity that they have to do to get the job done, right? So similar to that concept, I think.
Yeah, and I tell my team the same thing, and they're always surprised when they're like, "You're okay with me working from home?" And I said, "You're going to get so much more done at home because people aren't going to be coming off the floor asking you questions. They're going to call you if they have a real important question." But a lot of time people just stop over and just chit chat. And And so you get so much more done if you're locked into your zone somewhere.
Yeah, and I think which brings me to my next question about more so about the culture. It seems like based on what you've described, you've created a very much like a self-sufficient team members, right? They're kind of self-governing themselves, so you don't have to micromanage them. So tell me a little bit about your perspective on the kind of culture a company should have and the one that you're dreaming to build.
Yeah, I would say we don't take ourselves too seriously. If a big sale happens, we have these confetti poppers out in the office. In non-COVID times, we like to go, we'll do a Packer game in the summer. We'll go out to a baseball game or something. So it's pretty collegial atmosphere. We hire a lot of people straight out of GB and other local colleges. So it's a young group. Yeah, it's basically, I just don't want us to take ourselves too seriously. Work should be fun, not all fun, but work needs to be fun. You want to come to work in the morning. I don't want anyone to dread Monday morning coming to work.
Mm-hmm. And most entrepreneurs are big visionaries. They cast big visions. Some are, some have trouble articulating the vision and getting the whole team around that big vision. What practical step have you taken to make sure the entire team is buying into the big vision that American 10 has?
Yep. So for us, it's we have a strategic planning process. It's SDP. It's a lean philosophy. Our COO runs the process, but we start from the beginning and we talk about like where do we want to be in 3 years? And these are big, hairy goals. Breaking it down into that year, and then the team breaks it down into what the strategic initiatives are for the year, and there's an owner of each of those. I like the way Simon Sinek talks about it in his book, Start With Why. So I should be the why. I should be the one explaining the vision for what we want to do. My frontline leaders, if you think about it like a megaphone, should be the ones deciding how we're going to do it. And then those out in the frontline employees making the tents, making the sales calls should be the ones focused on the what. Mm-hmm. And I used to not appreciate fully how important it was to share that vision with the team. And I probably now overshare, but I'd rather they knew all the information and we're working with a full deck of cards when they're making their decisions. And it is still a collaborative process for the team as we go through this strategic planning. If I sign us up for something just silly, 3 times revenue goal or something, the team is going to stop me. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, Simon Sinek is one of my favorites as well. I think that book is a great book, The Why. But I think Michael Hyatt also has something very similar. I think in his book on leadership, he talks about that leaders should focus on the purpose behind your existence, the why behind your existence. And oftentimes the leader is the visionary, and they shouldn't be getting into the weeds on how something is done in terms of the actual technical execution of some of those things. So I think a lot of these authors kind of convey the same kind of a theme and message.
Yep.
How has your perspective on sales and marketing evolved? Obviously, you were in the corporate world, you were a consultant. Now you're actually having to build a business and has to be responsible for driving revenue and business growth. How has your perspective changed from a sales and marketing standpoint?
I appreciate how different each part of marketing. Like marketing, you say marketing, and it's like, it's just this one big kind of nebulous thing. Marketing has a lot of different arms and pieces, and so it's just we work with you guys. We've just switched over vendors because we like that you guys are focused on kind of the big picture on marketing. You're willing to empower our team because we have one person, our VP of marketing, she's a great marketer, but she's more content focused. We have someone who does graphics, but there's so much more to marketing. So working with an agency, at first you think, it's expensive, but then you realize that you're getting like 8 people for the price of 2, right? And so for me, when we first started, we tried to do everything ourselves, wasn't super effective. And then on sales, we subscribe to the They Ask You Answer framework, which the idea of 80% of a decision is actually made by the time they get to a salesperson now. It used to be back in the day when my dad he used to sell tape for 3M. Maybe someone met him at a trade show. Maybe they got a piece of literature in the mail, but the internet didn't exist, right? And so people didn't know anything about your product. So you had to do features and benefits and all that stuff. Well, now they've had all this time to go on and do research. So we subscribe to the answer all the questions online because they're going to get asked anyways. Be honest. We're working on a section on our website, which is going to tell someone if they should buy or rent. So basically saying like, don't buy from us. I would rather they did that and did that research. So we're getting good, warm leads coming to our sales team. And then on the sales front, I think customer service is extremely important. Even if you're over the phone, it's taking the time to listen. And our sales team does a really good job of this and listening to what the customer wants, bending over backwards to try to provide a level of service different than what our competition is, who sometimes don't even answer their phone. So,
and I know, especially as an entrepreneur, when you're trying to build a business that's scalable and can withstand the challenges of the economy and all sorts of stuff, you got to build your business on systems and process, right? And what are some of the proactive measures you've taken to make sure that the business lives outside of you? And I know you've taken a road trip for almost 30 days, completely removed yourself from the business to see how the business can stand without you, right? So what are some of the things you've done to make sure that happens, even when Tony isn't around?
Yeah, that's kind of what this year has been for us. So when we first started the year, we didn't know COVID was going to happen. We didn't realize that event tents were going to become socially distancing tents. And but we took off. We've tripled sales over last year. It's been a little bit crazy. This year was supposed to be the year when we were going to go through and start putting those systems and processes into place. Finally able to build a full executive team. So I was the CE everything for a large portion of the first couple of years. So being able to hire someone to come in and be our VP of supply chain and focus specifically on supply chain work. Now being able to hire a COO, working on getting a CFO into place. So that has all been important so they can build out their own areas. But then from outside of that, we're putting an ERP into place, which will be great. We're working on, we have HubSpot. You guys are helping us out with our HubSpot CRM. So we haven't always had the greatest data. And so this year is all about focusing on getting that data and being able to kind of generate actionable results. You mentioned the trip that I went on. It was my 40th birthday trip. I normally would have gone somewhere abroad, but I, confined to the US, decided to do the whole West Coast. So I jumped in an RV, had people meet me in a couple places. I ended up spending more time back here thinking about work than I wanted to. We had someone we had hired who turned out, as soon as I left, was like lighting fires, and not literally, but was causing issues. And so I learned a lot while being gone. I learned that the business can function without me. I learned that I do still have a role. I joke that I'm the chief joy officer. So it's keeping everyone motivated. It's keeping us kind of going forward, getting rowing in the same direction. And then I learned a lot about the team, both from some people showed their true colors in a super positive way, and some showed them in a negative way and are no longer with us.
Yeah, and it's a big risky decision for kind of the business owner to take complete time off and be gone for such a long time, right? But it's also a good litmus test to see, did we build a system, did we build a business in a way that it can operate without the founder being there at all times?
Otherwise, it's not a business.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Most certainly. And obviously, I think, like you said, if you built a business that's scalable, that it sustains, and even when the founder isn't there, that is a business, actually a sellable business. So what's your perspective on raising capital or scaling and selling in some sort of an exit strategy? Do you have some sort of a exit strategy like that in place, or you're more of a, hey, I just want to build this?
Yeah, it depends on the day. I really like building things. I love the team we have right now. I love the direction we're heading. Capital is always scarce, inevitably. When you're trying to, we grew 3x this year. Not super profitably, but that's because we were trying to keep up with the demand. We learned a ton about our business and invested a lot in our products, our people, In a lot of other areas, we're pioneering. We're going out and looking at some new markets, etc. So I'm happy where we are right now. I do have friends and family investors. None of them are chomping at the bit for much. They are just very happy to be along for the ride. That we're making them money. So if someone came and offered us $20 million tomorrow, I would certainly entertain it. But a lot of the people who are working here signed up to be here and work with me. And so I kind of feel like I have a responsibility there. We will be raising capital here at the end of the year. As I mentioned, we're looking into a really new, interesting market. It's a little bit adjacent to what we do. It's in the fabric space. And we're also working on call it building a competitor to ourselves. So we want to focus a lot on the e-commerce side of things. Getting onto Amazon direct to consumer. And so we do need a little bit of capital to be able to capitalize those businesses, build the websites, build the marketing, that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. So there will be a little bit of a raise here at the end of the year.
Makes sense. And I know we as entrepreneurs, we have a lot of responsibility. There's a lot of places, a lot of things that calls our attention. So you have to be extremely intentional about how you spend your time. Are there any productivity hacks that you have that makes you extremely productive?
I have learned since becoming an entrepreneur that I can't pour into other people unless I pour into myself. And so it's taking the time to focus. Like this morning, I spent 2 hours. I go to a cryotherapy spot here in town, do the cryotherapy, and they have a light bed and a heat pod, those types of things just to rejuvenate myself. I work with an integrative care doctor. So he thinks outside of what a traditional doctor would, where we're focused on what are the 5 things that are going to kill you and how can we supplement, what things can we do to help reduce your risk in those areas. So getting myself to be healthier. I would love to say working out. I just got a Peloton for my birthday. The days that I do the Peloton, I'm a lot more productive. And then the time blocking we talked about earlier, and setting aside, like tomorrow is completely open, and that allows me my mind just feels more free on those types of days, as opposed to 2 hours between a meeting. You're thinking about the next meeting. So that's another one for me. And then a lot of like apps and those types of things, but nothing off the top of my head.
And obviously you built an amazing team that's able to take some of that burden away from you, so which gives you a lot more creative thinking opportunity and not be burdened by some of those things. And obviously there's a lot of people who are watching are either entrepreneurs or looking to become one. What advice do you have for especially someone who's aspiring to be an entrepreneur?
Don't limit yourself to industries or types of businesses. I would never have thought I'd get into the tent industry. Like I knew nothing about tents previously. So I think being open to the opportunities, understanding about yourself, what type of business you want to be in. So we had our tent rental business. It was very service focused. We worked with brides on the weekend. That's not my cup of tea. I really like manufacturing. It's something that I can like walk out the door over here, talk to the folks on the manufacturing floor. It's a very different model. There's a lot of different ways you can become an entrepreneur. There's the search fund model, right, where you get a bunch of people to pay you to go out and find something that's doing a couple $1 million in EBITDA. We bought a business that was doing almost nothing, that had a process, some products, and a name, and we turned it around. So think about what will get you excited. Think about kind of what your risk appetite is. So if like I have an entrepreneur is what I call my wife. She makes good money as a consultant. So I had the ability for a couple of years I didn't pay myself. But so thinking about all those things and being open to different opportunities, different possibilities. I think back to that failure aspect, like you're going to fail. It's how you process that failure and how you use it to get better.
Most certainly. What advice would you give your younger self?
Don't start drinking beer. Or don't start eating fast food. I don't know. I'm happy the path that I took because I learned a ton working in consulting and not having my own business. I'm glad I didn't start out as an entrepreneur because I think I'm more well suited to be able to solve some of the bigger problems because I've seen them outside. So yeah, I always look back and there's a lot of different paths you can take in your life, right? And like, what if I had done this instead of this and you'd be in a completely different spot? Or like, what if I had kept dating this girl and I lived in California? It's so weird to think about all the different paths. So yeah, and I don't think there's much.
Any parting wisdom for our audience?
Parting wisdom for the audience. So I'm someone who struggles with mental health, anxiety, depression. I have a little bit of bipolar 2. Bipolar 2, you're a little bit hypomanic. You can spend a lot of time depressed. And I've learned this about myself. Everyone suffers from something. Get out and get help if you need to. Super successful people have the same issues. I've suffered from imposter syndrome. I always joke with one of my investors for a long time. So talk to a therapist, talk to a friend, yeah, don't sweep it under the rug. I think it's an important thing that we all talk about.
It's crazy. Every time I talk to you, you're always motivated, hyper, right? But you never think that on the other side, sometimes we all have some sort of a struggle, right? And we just learn how to cope with it oftentimes.
Yeah. There are days I don't want to get out of bed. Like going to the mailbox seems like a chore. More people than you realize struggle with it. I'm glad that it's something that people talk about. But even now in COVID, you start to see all these people posting like, oh, my beautiful cousin passed away. And you go and read and it's like, so-and-so tragically passed away. It's like suicide. There's so many people who are overdosing on drugs and committing suicide. That's kind of a secondary effect of this pandemic. There's a lot of people who are lonely. So it's also advice if you're not someone who suffers from anxiety or depression, that's fantastic. But keep your ear to the ground for those who do and listen and try to be helpful. You don't always have to solve the problem, just having a listening and being helpful.
Yeah, and I think sometimes we all need to kind of pause and say, hey, I'm actually dealing with a human being. This person do have emotions and feelings and struggles and problems. It's not just a business transaction or just a simple transaction, right? I think sometimes we're all guilty of just kind of passing by and not really taking a note of the person that we just passed by.
That's why I stop yelling at people when they cut me off on the road, because it's like their dad could have just died or something. Like my daughter still just chastised me when I do get a little bit of road rage, but I've tried to dial that back because everyone has a story and something that's going on.
I don't do that because I've heard a lot of stories of getting shot for doing it. So I don't I don't cut in front of anybody. But
Tony, you live in a very different part of the country than I do, I guess.
But thanks again, Tony, for sparing this afternoon with me and sharing some of your wisdom and experience. We certainly appreciate it and wish you all the best in the days ahead.
All right. Thanks.
This episode of Coffee with Closers is brought to you by One IMS, a leading digital marketing agency helping businesses win new customers. To request a free marketing ROI audit, please visit oneims.com. If you enjoyed this video, please share it. To make sure you never miss an episode, please subscribe.